Rest is not a reward. It's not something you earn after crossing every item off of your to-do list. It's not something that happens when everything else in your life is done. Rest is the foundation. It's the soil. It's the breath that allows everything else to grow in your life. Yet many of us have been taught to fear it. Many of us have been taught to see it as laziness, as a form of weakness, as something that we can't afford to do. But what if rest is the most radical thing that we can do? What if rest is how we dismantle the systems that were never meant to sustain us? What if rest is liberation? I'm Dr. Malika. This is the IOA podcast. Today we're talking about rest, not as an escape, but as reclamation, not as indulgence, but as resistance. This is episode 15, Rest as Liberation. Let's root together. This is the IOA podcast, a space for truth, tenderness, and becoming whole, one breath at a time. Welcome back, everyone, resilient family. If this is your first time here, I am so glad that you found your way to this space. The IOA podcast is a weekly practice in collective healing. It's rooted in West African wisdom and ancestral memory, and it's the kind of rest that frees us from the inside out. So each week we gather here to remember what we already know, that healing is not a hustle, that wholeness is not a performance, and that rest is not something that we have to justify. So before we go any further, I want us to remember what I need from you. I need you to like, subscribe to the channel if you have not already done so. I need you to like this episode. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, I need you to like the episode. You also even have the opportunity to leave comments and feedback. So we definitely need you to do that, because by you doing that, that allows us to continue to have this podcast, and it tells the algorithm that you want to hear this type of material. So now that we got that out of the way, let's get into talking about today's topic. We are going to deep dive into talking about rest as a practice of liberation. And I want to be clear and set the guide here at the top of the show. This is not about things like bubble baths and spa days, though there's nothing wrong with those things. Those things are also necessary. This is about the kind of rest that disrupts systems. So the kind of rest that says, I will not produce my way into worthiness. It's the kind of rest that reminds us that we are human beings, not human doings. And this episode is rooted in chapter 4 of my book, Rooted in Resilience, The Rhythm. It's the IOA of healing. And so we are going to draw from the work of scholars. We're drawing from the work of healers. We're drawing from the work of revolutionaries and those that understood that rest is a political act. So just an insert here. Think about what I've been talking to us about for the duration of this podcast since the end of 2025, and how I have been talking about the fact that now is the time for our community to rest. We are often always on the front lines when it comes to social activism, when it comes to standing up against the systems and disrupting systems. And now is our time to rest. It is not our times to be out there. It is our time to replenish, recover, recharge, and make sure that our community is healthy and whole. So we're going to weave in, along with the political and the revolutionaries, we are going to weave in some of the voices of our ancestors who rested in resistance. And they did it even when the world demanded otherwise from them. So I want you to take a breath and I want you to settle in. So let's take a moment. I want you to give yourself permission to simply be. And I know sometimes the silence is hard, but I want you to just simply be and be okay with not doing anything. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and we're going to jump into this episode. We're going to talk about what are some of the things that steal rest from us. Be back in just a second. Welcome back to the pod, everyone. And we are going to get into this first segment of the episode. We are going to talk about the truth of the matter, the heart of this matter. Rest was stolen from us. So, from the moment our ancestors were forced onto those slave ships, rest became a weapon of control. And I want to talk about just the experience I had standing in the castles in the city of Mina, which is in the country of Ghana. And I got to visit both of the castles. One was where the women were primarily held, and the other was where men and women were held. And one of the things that my soul very much felt in that space, although there were no people there anymore, it's empty rooms, empty space, but it's filled with darkness clearly because they're castles and the rooms are like dungeon like rooms, was the unrest in my spirit that I felt in that space. And so we heard with the tour guides, they talked about the fact that the slaves were not allowed to have any luxuries. They were not allowed to get comfortable. They weren't allowed to have rest because the enslavers understood that exhausted people are easier to control and to dominate. And that was their goal. So people who never stop moving, people who are always going, they never stop working, they never stop producing, those people don't have the energy to fight back and to resist. They don't have the clarity to imagine freedom. So they denied us rest. It was withheld. If we did it, it was punished. And even after we were emancipated in the United States, even after those chains were no longer there, the chains are broken, the demand for constant labor didn't stop. And that is the reason why I talked about in the opening of the show how it's really important for us to understand that we are now in a season of rest and how this is vital. We have been on the front lines for decades. If we're being honest, for centuries, because this fight didn't start in the civil rights movement. This fight started from the time they took us captive, took us across all those thousands of miles of ocean, brought us here, all that we endured as captives. That was when the fight began, and we were constantly fighting just to get rest. Now is our time to get that rest. And so, for some reason, Black people were expected to rebuild this country that had stolen their labor for centuries, and they want us to do it without rest. And I find that ironic that we're here again. All those who are now feeling what we have felt for decades, for centuries in this country, they are now asking for us to help. They're asking, where are we? Not realizing that we have constantly been working and building, and we have not been given the opportunity to rest. And now is our time to rest. And so we are going to rest because we need to do it. Because without the rest, without the support, without the acknowledgement that we often do not get, we are not able to be whole. So as we fast forward to today, we're still living under those expectations. And I just mentioned that those expectations are still here. They have never gone away. They just look different. We're still being told that our value is tied to our productivity. We're being told that rest is something that we have to earn. We're being told that if we're not grinding, if we're not hustling, if we're not building, if we're not proving ourselves, then we're failing. But here's the thing, that is a lie. And the lie was designed for a specific purpose. The lie was designed to keep us in survival mode, to keep us too tired to dream, to keep us too tired and too exhausted to heal, and to keep us too depleted to resist. So rest then. It's not just about sleep. Now, me, a person that chronically operates off of limited sleep, but I do try to make sure it's quality, sleep is important. It's necessary, it's sacred. But rest is about reclaiming our humanity. It's about us saying, I am more than what I produce. I am worthy of care. I'm worthy of softness. I am worthy of having ease in my life, not because I earned it, but because I simply exist. I often talk about the fact that we are loved by what we produce. We are the culture. They love our music. They love our language. They love our athletic ability. They love what we represent on screen and how we are able to produce things. They love our creativity. They love the way that we just have a way of entertaining and bringing in energy, but they love what we're producing and they don't love us. And that is the reason why they constantly put us in the hamster wheel of trying to prove that we deserve rest. One of the books I've often talked about on this podcast, which was one of the inspirations for me writing really Rooted for Resilience, is the book by Tricia Hershey. And she's a founder of a movement called the NAP Ministry. This is where that phrase or that concept or idea of rest as resistance comes from. She teaches that rest is a form of reparations. It is our way of pushing back against the grind culture that was built on the exploitation, of Black bodies. She reminds us that rest is not laziness, it's liberation. And in West African cosmology, rest is literally woven into the rhythm of life. The Aiken concept of Nacrabia is, which means destiny, basically includes cycles of work, cycles of rest. So it's movement and then there's stillness. There is a time for planting. We do need to have that. In order to harvest, you have to plant, and a time for letting the soil restore itself. There's a time for action and a time for reflection. So our ancestors knew this even back then. They built rest into their rituals, their ceremonies, their daily rhythms. They understood that rest is how we stay rooted. That rest is also how we sustain the work of liberation. We're doing it not just for us. It's not just about us, but for the generations that come after us that we will never live to see. So when you rest, you're not being selfish. You're being strategic. You're reclaiming what was stolen from you, and you are literally choosing liberations. So I hope that this was inspirational to you and you're ready to continue to do a deeper dive into this topic. We are going to, again, take another break. Just reminders on making sure you like and subscribe to the podcast as we exit out of this particular segment of the episode. And we will be back in just a second. Welcome back, everyone, to the IOA podcast. And we are going to get into this next segment talking about the connection between our nervous system and rest. So, again, I would not be me if I did not find a way to talk about the psychological concepts or the science behind a lot of the things that we are talking about. So, let's get into talking about our bodies. Rest isn't just a shift in our mind, it is really a biological need. Our bodies are designed to move between states of activation and states of rest. This is how our nervous system works. So when we are constantly in the fight or flight mode, which comes from the sympathetic nervous system, which is a derivative or a subsection of the autonomic nervous system. And so just for a little mini lecture for you all, that system activates based off of what its signal says. So it doesn't have the ability to differentiate and discriminate to make sure the signal is an accurate signal. It does what it does automatically. So autonomic, automatically. And so what happens when we're in that fight or flight, when our sympathetic nervous system kicks in, our heart rate is going to increase, our muscles are going to tense, our breathing becomes shallow, and this is basically your body preparing to protect you from danger because that's the signal it responds to, danger. It's also beautiful life-saving response when it is needed. Here's the problem. You're like, that does not sound bad, but here's the problem. For many of us, especially those of us who have navigated things like racism, economic stress, caregiving responsibilities, the historical trauma that comes with our existence, our nervous systems are basically stuck in a survival mode. So we're always on, we're always alert. We're always braced for basically the next threat. And when the body never gets the opportunity or chance to rest, it is going to eventually break down. We see this in the chronic illnesses like hypertension, diabetes, autoimmune disorders, which all unfortunately are very common in the African American community. So, when we look at even the mental health struggles that we see people dealing with, anxiety and depression, this is also reflective of the fact that a person is constantly on and does not have the ability to turn themselves off. We will also see it in exhaustion, and that will settle into places like our bones. It will settle in spaces and refuses to leave. So it's like we want to be able to replenish and give our body the ability to recover, but it doesn't have the ability to do so because we're chronically in this activated survival mode. So, why is rest so important? It's so important because it's how we signal our body and tell it it is safe. It can let go, and it doesn't have to fight right now. This is where the other side of the autonomic nervous system, which is the parasympathetic nervous system, comes into play. It puts us back into our rested and our baseline state. So when we activate this system, our heart rate now is going to slow down. That is what the parasympathetic does. It allows our breathing to deepen and to be more full. It allows our muscles to release all the tension that has been holding, and our bodies have the ability to begin the healing process. But here's what's really important, and I think that we need to understand this. Rest is not a passive activity. It's active care. It is a form of practice. And you have to figure out what your practice looks like because this practice will look different from person to person. For some people, it's simply just getting enough sleep. For others, it could be sitting still or walking slowly through nature. It could be lying on the floor with your legs up on the wall. It could be listening to music that soothes and calms your spirit. It could be simply a nice, good, delicious cup of tea. I love me some good tea. Or it could simply be staring out of a window without any thoughts at all in your mind about what you should be doing. You are just present in that moment. Rest is what I'm here to tell you is whatever you allow your nervous system to do that softens it. Whatever allows your body to remember that you're more than productivity and that you're allowed to just be, whatever that is what rest is to you. So I want to be clear that rest is not about fixing things. It's not about fixing yourself. You are not broken. Remember, we talk about, and we've been talking about from the beginning, it's in the book. I talk about the fact that we're healing roots that already exist. So we're not broken. We're just doing the root work. Rest is about honoring that fact and the fact that you are living, breathing, being that requires and deserves care. So you are a seed that needs to come time, that needs that time in the soil. You are a root that needs nourishment. So when you rest, you're not doing nothing. You're actually doing the most important thing that you could absolutely do in the world. You're tending to your wholeness. And I want you to understand that that is priceless. There's no amount of money, there's no amount of time that you could put on the ability for you be able to tend to you getting to a place of wholeness. So I hope this was motivating. I hope now connecting some of these ancestral and cultural concepts to the science as well as to the psychology will be helpful for you. We're going to take another break as always. We're going to come back and we're going to do our Aya pause a little bit earlier in this episode. So we're going to come back with our Aya pause. Welcome back, everyone, to the Aya Pause for episode 15. So we are going to pause here for a moment And we know that the iapause is a space for us to breathe and to reflect. So let these words settle into your body. I want you to close your eyes if you're in a place where it feels safe for you to do so. If not, just soften your gaze wherever you're at. Take a deep breath in through the nose and let it out slowly through your mouth. So in, 1, 2, 3, 4. Out, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now place one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly. I want you to feel the rise and the fall of your breath. Feel the warmth of your hands on your body. As you're breathing, I want you to ask yourself, when was the last time that you truly rested without guilt, without distraction, without feeling like you had to earn it? Ask yourself, what does my body need from me right now? Ask yourself, what would it feel like to give myself permission to rest, not someday, not when everything is done, but right now? I want you to take one more deep breath in through the nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. And out through the mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4. And when you're ready, I want you to gently open your eyes, return to the space, return to your body, return to the truth that you are worthy of rest exactly the way you are. We're going to fade out and we will be back and we'll continue on into the episode. Welcome back, everyone, to the podcast. And we are going to get into talking about rest as a collective practice. So here's something I want us to sit with, and I think that this is really important. I want us to sit with understanding that rest is not just an individual practice. So we have talked about a lot of the individual things that need to be done on our part, but we have to understand that everything is about the collective. So we've been taught to think of rest as something that we do alone, behind closed doors, in isolation, away from other people. But that's now how our ancestors practiced rest. They did it in community, they rested in community, and they would gather under trees, around fires, and in circles. So I want us to understand the concept of the circle because this is something that is very, very important to me. The reason why it's important to me is because it is a way for us to collectively get together, to not have to be on, and to be there to be a support to one another in the various things that we are navigating. And so I looked at the concept from the historical standpoint and from the ancestral standpoint, and I tried to put together a modern version of this. In these circles, they would sing together, they laughed together, they held each other's grief as well as each other's joy. So, rest for them in this space and in this concept was relational. It's woven into the very fabric of our daily lives. It was how they sustained each other through some of the most impossible circumstances. And we don't need to beat a dead horse. We know how impossible those circumstances are, and the fact that they should not have survived what they did survive. And the way they were able to do it is through the collective practice of rest. So, as we return to that, we have to ask ourselves in today's day and time, what would it look like to rest in community? And so for a lot of us, this will be different answers depending on where you are and what you have access to. So I would say the general answer is that we need to create spaces where people can gather without an agenda. So that means there's no productivity that's requested, there's no pressure to perform. All of these things have to go away. So I will ask you, how do you create a space that looks like this? What would it look like for you to hold space for each other? And that would include things like each other's exhaustion. So that means you say you don't have to do anything right now. You just can just simply be, right? One of the things I talked about in episode number 14 was the fact that holding space is a skill set. It's not a superpower. It's something we need to learn how to do. In this circle concept, what it does is it allows us to hold space for one another, allows us to be present, and holding space is not about fixing it for the person. I talked about this. So, yes, they're bringing their grief, they're bringing their joy, but it's not about you fixing it, it's about your presence. And so, that is what the circle concept really is about. This is why I created this as a component of what I do for Aya Healing and Empowerment. It's about creating containers, and the containers are the people where rest is normalized and where it's honored, because in often so many places, rest is not honored. We want a place where rest is a collective commitment. So that means I'm holding you accountable, you're holding me accountable. All right. Because the truth is this, we can't heal in isolation. I've talked about this. We are relational. We're dealt to regulate each other by being in spaces with people that allow us to regulate. And so we need each other. We need to witness each other's rest the same way we need to witness each other's productivity and strength. We need to remind each other that it's okay for us to slow down. It's okay to pause. It's okay to let it go. And I am especially a proponent of this when you don't know what to do and it seems like you're scrambling trying to figure out an answer. The best thing to do is to not do anything. So when we rest together, what does that look like? Resting together basically is allowing us to build something that's powerful. We're building resilience, which is the reason why I named my book about being rooted in that, because it's necessary. We're building community. We are now changing the culture. We're creating a culture that basically says your worth is not tied to your productivity. Your worth is inherent. Because you exist, your worth exists. You belong here exactly the way you are. So, my invitation to you is to think about your circles literally, the people who are in your life who give you permission to rest. Who are those people? Who are the people who hold space for you to allow your softness and your stillness and allow you to just be? How can you be that to someone else? So if you have it, how can you be that to another person? And because rest is not just something that we claim for ourselves, we got to remember that we need to reciprocate it and we need to hold space for other people. It's something that we offer to each other. And what it is a practice of mutual care. So it's a practice of love. It's a practice of community. And it's a practice of caring. So I want us to take another break, and then we are going to come back and dig a little bit deeper into our episode. Be back in just a second. Welcome back, everyone, to the podcast. And we're going to go into some practical rest practices. I like to always pair these concepts with things that are practical and relevant that you can actually implement on your own. So, some of you are probably listening to this episode and you're thinking, okay, I hear you. Rest is wonderful. That sounds great. But how do I actually do this? How do I rest when I have things like a full time job? I have kids I have to take care of. I have bills to pay. And this economy is crazy. So, I don't have the luxury of downtime. And the responsibilities are actually stacking up higher, not higher. I want you to know that I honor that. I'm not a person that is not without things that I am responsible for. I also have bills to pay. I also have things that I'm responsible for. I do also have the demands on me, and I have a lot of hats and balls in the air. I wear a lot of hats and I juggle a lot of balls, right? So, rest is not always easy to access, especially when we're in a world that's designed to keep us moving. This world, really, if we're being honest, is designed for us to be stuck in the rat race eternally. Thinking about the fact that they actually want to raise the age of retirement higher than 65 just tells you how much they really want us to be stuck in this rat race. But I want you to know that rest practices do not have to be grand. They really don't have to be a week-long thing. They don't have to be a vacation, although I love me a good trip. Doesn't have to be a retreat. It can just be simple micro moments that you weave together throughout your day. So here are some practices that I want you to try. So first one I want to give you is the 5-minute reset. I want you to set a timer and I want you to set it for 5 minutes. I want you to either sit down or lie down. But while you're there, I want you to close your eyes, focus on your breath, and I want you to inhale for 4 counts, hold it for 4 counts, and then exhale for 4 counts. That's it. And I want you to do that for 5 minutes. 5 minutes can shift your entire nervous system. Here's the second one I want to give you. It's called the evening wind down. So if you don't have a wind down practice, this might be one that you might be willing to put into action. Create a ritual to signal to your body that your day is ending. So the way you could do this is you constantly are lighting a candle, you start brewing your herbal tea and drinking your herbal tea, you are journaling or you're listening to calming music. The ritual is about consistency. So making it consistent so that your body begins to associate this practice with rest. If you do that consistently, eventually your body will know it's time for me to turn off, it's safe for me to turn off and to recharge. Here's another one. There's number 3, the digital Sabbath. And oh, I know this can be challenging because I stay on my phone for a variety of different reasons. But choose one evening a week or 1 hour of a day for you to unplug. So that means you don't have a phone, you're not checking emails, you're not scrolling on a device. It's just you, your breath, and whatever brings you peace in that moment. Now, here's a challenge. Like for me, I like to read. Most of my books are Kindle version books, which means they're digital, so they're on my iPad. However, I do have a very robust library, so I have no excuse. Most of the books that I have in digital form, I also have in paperback form or hard copy form, so I can go get them. So you need to get off of the device. That digital Sabbath is a good reset, and it's a good way for your body to actually deactivate from being on constantly throughout the day. Number 4, the body scan. So I want you to lie down and I want you to slowly bring attention to each part of your body. Like start with your toes, moving up to your head. Notice where you're holding tension. Breathe into those spaces and let those spaces soften because constantly holding tension in certain places may tell you, number one, that's where you hold your stress when you're dealing with a lot and carrying a lot. And number 2, that you're not getting enough rest and recuperation time. And that's the reason why you have that accumulated buildup. All right. Number 5 is the permission slip. And I really like this one. I want you literally to write yourself a permission slip. So some of us need the tactile, kinesthetic, visual reminder to literally do this. So this could be on your refrigerator, where every time you go to the refrigerator, you see this, so it doesn't allow it to escape your mind. You will write literally, I and your name, give myself permission to rest without guilt. I am worthy of care and I am allowed to do nothing. And I say, write it real big. If you want to type it, that's fine. But it needs to literally be something that you can see that is constantly a reminder that you are able to rest and you do not have to feel guilty about it. Make sure you keep it somewhere where you can see it. For me, the refrigerator is usually always where I go. I'm constantly in there for something at some point. So I know that I will always see it on a regular basis. And so I want you to know that whatever out of these 5 examples that I gave you, that rest is a practice. Sometimes it's going to take you a little bit of time to really unlearn the guilt and the urgency and the need to always be doing something. Again, I speak to you as a rehabilitated person when it comes to this. So I want you to be patient with yourself. I had to be patient with myself. Start small, rest for 5 minutes, then you rest for 10 minutes, then you rest for 20 minutes, and eventually it becomes a practice that is second nature to you. So let rest become part of your rhythm and not a disruption to your life. All right. So I want you to remember as we go out of this segment that rest is not selfish. It's how you sustain your capacity to care for others. It's how you stay rooted. It's how you keep showing up, not just for your community, but even for yourself. And that's the part of this that is very, very fundamental. So we're going to take a second. We're going to come back and we are going to close out the show. Be back in just a second. Welcome back, everyone. And we are going to close out this episode. And I know we covered a whole lot of information today, as we usually do. We talked about the fact that rest was stolen from us and how it is also a biological need. We also got into talking about the fact that rest is a collective practice. So it's not something that we just do for ourselves. And we talked about how we can weave it into our daily lives into a way that's practical and sustainable, because that part is really important. But I want to leave you with this: rest is not the end of the work. Rest is what makes the work sustainable and what's allow you to continue to do that. Our ancestors rested so that they can continue to keep resisting. They rested so they can continue to keep dreaming. We are the product of their dreams. They rested so that they could keep building. They built so that we could continue to actually benefit from the things that they created. And so we have to do it as well. It's not about checking out. It's about rooting deeper. It's about creating conditions for healing, for clarity, and for joy. It's about remembering that we are more than our output. We're more than our achievements, and we're more than the roles we play. We are human beings. We are sacred. We are enough. So I want you to rest, resilient ones. This is really important. Rest. Do it without apology. Do it without guilt. Rest as an act of resistance and rest as an act of love and liberation. The one thing I will say is if I need to take a nap or if I want to check out, I do so now without any guilt and without any apology. I wish that for you. So thank you as always for being here as a part of this space. This space is important because it's not just my space. This is our space collectively together. And I want you to continue to keep making space for rest in your world that is constantly telling you that you don't have the right to do that. Continue telling yourself that I choose me. So, as always, before I close out the episode, I want to remind you that the circle gathering is something that is near and dear to my heart. And it's something that I will be moving around the country and will happen quarterly. And so, probably for the first quarter of 2026, we're going to have it again in California in this area. But if you would like to see the circle brought to where you are, please, please let me know, because I will be willing to travel to places and spaces so that we can have these gatherings across the country. All right. It's where we get together to practice rest. It's where we get together to reflect, and it's where we get together to collectively heal. So if you want more information, you can reach out to me on my social media platforms. You can also go to my website, MalikaMBrown.com. And on that website, you will be able to tell me what it is that you need from me. I also want to talk about the book because the book is really, really important. And so I want you to get the book. It is on my website as well. You can go to MalikaMBrown.com/store/P/rooted in resilience, and you can purchase the book. I guarantee you, you will not be sorry. My husband, when he read it, when I was writing it and finished the draft, he told me that it was life changing. Like this was my opus that I created. And so I want you to partake in this movement because I feel that it is very, very important. Also, I want you to know that something in this episode, if it resonated for you, I want you to share that. We want to hear from you. So I have created the ability to do what we call a speak pipe voicemail. So you can leave me voicemails. I want to hear from you because it gives us the ability for us to hear directly from our show listeners. And so I'll show that again. It's speakpipe.com/the IOA. This is where you can go and you can leave me voicemails, and it can either be part of an episode or I could read out what it is that you have left for me in a future episode. So remember, you also can find us on social media. We are in a lot of places. We are on Substack, which is where we have the interactive interactions with each other. We are on Instagram. We are on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We want you to interact with us to let us know what it is that's stuck for you and what it is that is working for you. And so I want you to continue to take a moment to explore something that we talked about today in this episode. If something worked for you, if something resonated for you, what you need to do going forward is to make sure that you are using this in a way that's consistent. So until next Tuesday, I want you to take care of yourself. I want you to remember that you're rooted in your rising. And remember, as we always say on this show, that we are healing loudly and we're living softly. And I am rooting with you and you're rooting with me. So until next episode, I'll see you. Have a great rest of your